Hello and welcome to A Victorious Life is Yours. So this segment of A Victorious Life is Yours is called His Temple. Our bodies is the temple of the Holy Spirit. The Most High God Himself dwells on the inside of these bodies. So we must make sure that we are keeping these bodies as physically fit and healthy as we possibly can. You know, with every candle that we put on that birthday cake, it gets a little bit harder to do that. But I will endeavor to inspire you, to encourage you, to push you to make sure that you're doing all you can to be physically healthy as well as mentally healthy. So I will be doing videos on those subjects. I hope you can join me. I look forward to seeing you as we get these temples in shape, because you know what? A victorious life is yours in His temple. Hello everybody, and welcome to A Victorious Life is Yours, and this is our segment on His temple. And the reason being is that our bodies is the temple of the Holy Spirit. This is where He rules, reigns, and where He resides. And so we are also going to make sure that we're taking good care of these bodies. So this video I just wanted to come and do because it's a follow-up to my rotator cuff shoulder surgery that I had done on my left shoulder back in April. So I had surgery done in April, and so and then I had to do PT. So just wanted to give you all an update as to where we are with that going on right now. So in April, I had rotator cuff surgery done to repair this rotator cuff in my left shoulder. Now, it was a major tear. My orthopedic doctor did not realize how extensive the tear was until he went in. So the process of that was, when I first went in to see him, that I had some x-rays done. He had me do a series of tests, you know, pushing against his arms, hands, holding my arms up to see if I could hold them up. And then we did a x-ray. Now, x-rays only show joint and muscles. X-rays do not show tissue. So we already knew that I would have to get an MRI done. However, you know, protocol, insurance companies, their process of MRIs, because they are so expensive. I mean, very expensive. My MRI was $7,000. I did not pay that because I have Medicare. I thank God for being 66 plus, right? 66. Get Medicare. 65. If you're 65, you need to go ahead and apply for Medicare 3 months before you turn 65. That's just a little nugget. So Medicare took care of most of that expense. I didn't pay anywhere close to $7,000, but because MRIs are so expensive, insurance companies want to make sure that you go through a process. And that process is, we're going to have you do, we're going to want you to take a x-ray first. Then if it can be treated orally with medications, then we'll do that. And if none of that works, then we'll go to MRI. So I had an MRI, and the thing is, because I have a rotator, my rotator cuff is also torn in my right shoulder, but not as bad. It wasn't giving me a problem. This one was really waking me up in the middle of the night. The pain, it really kind of felt like a dull toothache. And I could not sleep. So we said, okay, let's get the left one done. If all goes well, if God doesn't heal the right one, then we'll do the process with the right. So when we got the MRI results back and the doctor looked at it, he said, you know what? If I did not know that I was looking at the shoulders of a 66-year-old patient, I would think that I was looking at the shoulders of a 76-year-old patient. So that's how bad this was going on. Now, we don't know particularly, because people have said, well, how do you get a rotator cuff tear? Well, most of the times it comes as a direct result of an injury. Like if you fall on your shoulder, if you were hit in your shoulder. I know that a lot of athletes, such as golfers or baseball players, that use these shoulders a lot get a lot of those injuries. But for the most part, a lot of times there is an apparent tear. And of course, as we get older, I keep saying, when these bodies get older, oh my gosh, so many different things happen to your body as you get older. But as we get older, certain things happen to our body. And the thing about a rotator cuff tear is just like any other tear. Like if I get a tear in my shirt here, that it might start out as a small tear, okay? But the more that I'm wearing this shirt, the more that I'm washing it, wearing it, washing it, and wearing it, the tear is going to get bigger and bigger. So that's the deal with these shoulders. Now, I know with this right shoulder, because for many, many years, for actually 15 years, I was a flight attendant, and that required a lot of lifting and putting baggage in the overhead compartments, closing the heavy airplane doors, pulling that luggage cart behind me. Look at the positioning of my shoulder. So pushing the beverage cart up and down the aisles for 15 years. So I believe that that probably had a lot to do with how this one got torn. What happened here still remains to be seen. But the bottom line is neither here nor there necessarily how it happened. It's what are we going to do about it? So we discussed me having surgery, and the beauty of it is that he said that it would not be a surgery where he had to cut. It would be done arthroscopically. So in essence, what I have is I have 2 holes here, a hole here, and 2 holes in the back. And then he did it laserly. And then he also went in and cleared out some arthritis in this shoulder and took care of a bone spur that was in this shoulder. And he did some work in my bicep, because normally, usually, typically when there's a major tear in the rotator cuff, because all of these muscles are in cahoots together, they work together, they go ahead and do some work in your biceps as well. So we talked about me needing to be in a sling, that I would need to be in a sling for 3 weeks. Okay, so went into surgery, got prepped for surgery. One of the things that was so beautiful about that is that they gave me a nerve block in my neck when they shot the nerve block in my neck, and the anesthesiologist said, you're going to feel like a quick prick. And it's going to feel like an electrical shock going down your arm, and then it'll be over. I was like, oh my God. And so when he stuck the needle in my neck, sure enough, I said, whew, because that's what it felt like, an electrical shock going down my arm. But as soon as I said, oh, it was over, and it was. And this entire arm, shoulder down to my fingers, was numb. And the beautiful thing about that is that it stayed numb for 24 hours, 24, almost 36 hours, which was wonderful for me. So what's supposed to have been a 1.5 hour surgery turned to 2.5 hours, because when he went in, he saw how major the tear was. Okay. When we came out of that process, after I went into recovery, after surgery, he talked to my husband and talked to the young lady who assisted me as well and went with me as well, and said, you need to make sure that you let her know that this was a major tear, and you know, I had to do some work in there, and she has to make sure, and we have to make sure that this thing heals, because if it doesn't heal properly, then the next step would be a shoulder replacement. I wasn't going down that road. I said, God, no. So anyway, so if this is your shoulder cap and this is your rotator cuff, which are basically tendons, okay, there's 4 of them. It's supposed to fit like this over your shoulder cap, right? Well, mine, not only was there a tear, okay, mine had protracted or retracted away from. So he had to repair the tear and bring it back in alignment. Now, when later I found out, you know, when I went to my, actually 3 weeks ago, when I went for a follow-up, I found out that normally, typically, what would have taken 2 pins, okay, to attach everything to, mind you, I have 6. 6 in my shoulder. So think on that. So, went home with the ice machine, because he'd already told me that ice was going to be my best friend. Surely, truly, ice was my best friend. And so went home, and I'd already had my meds already lined up. So the key is, and I want to give you some keys, especially if you are looking at needing to have a rotator cuff repair surgery or any surgery that you might be facing and looking at. I want to give you 4 tips, 4 good tips. So number 1 is follow the doctor's orders. Follow the doctor's orders. So I went home with my ice machine, and that thing was my best friend, just like he said, because whenever you have some work done or surgery done, there's going to be some inflammation. Okay. When there's inflammation, there's going to be swelling and pain. Ice is going to help that. So I was icing every time I sat down. I would ice. Now I would sit down in a recliner. So I had a recliner in my living room. I had a recliner in my bedroom or in the basement. And those were the 2 places that I basically stayed: living room, basement, and bedroom. So I had a recliner. Anytime I was sitting down, I would put that ice machine on, and I'll put a little picture in this so you all can see, but it looks like a little ice chest, and you fill it with water. Now what I did was I filled it with water halfway, and then I put 4 frozen bottles of water. I froze 4 bottles of water in the freezer, and I took those out and put them in that water that I had filled in that little chest up halfway. So that kept the water cold. And then it's a little cap or little like pouch thing that you sit on your shoulder or whatever the area is that you're, icing. And then there's a tube, and cold water run up through that tube and through little channels in that little pad. And that's what keeps your shoulder cool. Now, mind you, I had to get a second pad because my cute little kitty, I took it off because you can disconnect the pad with the hose. I laid it down on the table downstairs in the basement, just laid it there. One of them, don't know which one it was, decided to use it as a kneading pad. Man, when I went to hook that thing up later on and put it on my shoulder was getting wet. I said, what in the world? And I held it up, and it looked like a sprinkler system. So I had to get another one. But anyway, I was going to do whatever it took because that was my best friend. So every time I got a chance, every time I was sitting down, I would ice. So the second thing, ice is going to be your best friend. Ice, ice, ice. Ice for inflammation because it's going to be swollen and painful. So you want to ice. Second thing, I stayed on top of my meds. I have a low pain tolerance. I cannot take pain. So the pain medicines that I would prescribe were Oxycodone, which is a narcotic for pain, Meloxicam, which was for inflammation. I had Gabapentin, which was for nerves. And then, of course, I had whatever I took for a milder pain med, which was Ibuprofen or Tylenol. Now, I took myself off of the Oxycodone after 2 days because I don't like using it. It's a narcotic, like I said, effective, but I don't like using it, and it's addictive. So I took myself off of that and substituted it with Tylenol. But I still can continue taking the Gabapentin and the Meloxicam. Okay, so tip number one, ice, ice, ice. Follow the doctor's orders. Number 2 is stay on top of your meds, a med regimen. Whatever that med regimen is, stay on top of it, especially if there's pain and going to be pain involved, which there will be. So then I stayed in that sling for 4 weeks. What's supposed to have been 3 was 4 because of the major tear. The only issue that I had was sleeping because I could not sleep on my back. So I had to sleep, and my husband and I slept in the guest bedroom because we have a water bed. I love my water bed. We've had that water bed the whole time we've been married. But I couldn't get in and out of that water bed, so we slept in the guest bedroom, and I could not sleep on my back comfortably. That was the only position that I could. And I'm not a back sleeper, I'm a side sleeper. So I bought one of those wedge pillows because I had to be elevated. These shoulders had to be elevated. So I bought one of those wedge pillows, and then I put 3 pillows, 2 across the bottom and 1 across the top on top of that. So I basically was sitting up, kind of. And people have said, well, I slept in my recliner. I wasn't about to sleep in my recliner because, again, living room or the basement, no, in my bed. And that wedge pillow worked pretty good, but I still did not get any decent sleep. Now, that's the next thing, being as comfortable as you can for sleeping because you need your rest. So do whatever it takes to sleep comfortably. Okay, so I did that. So for 4 weeks instead of 3, I was in the sling. Week 4, I went back to the doctor. They took the sling off. My arm, mind you, had been like this for 4 weeks, so stiff. The very next day, I went to PT. Okay, the very next day when they took the sling off. So 4 weeks in the sling, I began PT. Now, I was in PT, and the first part of my physical therapy involved stretching and trying to get back range of motion. Because mind you, this arm was like this for 4 weeks. So it was really, really stiff. I remember the first day, and the therapist that worked with me on that day kept saying, "You're really, really stiff. You're very stiff." Yeah, my arm has been like this for 4 weeks. So that was the hard part, that was the uncomfortable part, was, when he was, try to stretch this arm out, and then I would do exercises to stretch out this arm as well to get my range of motion back. So just a couple of things that we did. So one of the things that we did was I had these bands, and they were different color bands. I had a yellow, a blue, a green, and an orange. This blue is the most strongest or the most resistant band. Of course, I didn't start with that. I started with the yellow band, but we started doing what are called rows, where you're extending your arms back to your shoulder blades touch. Okay? Now, at home, when I was doing these exercises, because remember I said the tip is follow the doctor's orders. So when the therapist sent sheets of exercises home for me to do, that's what I did. Now, I went to therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays for only an hour. Mind you, that's not enough. I had to do, and it was always 3 sets of 10, I still had to do my homework. So even though you're going to physical therapy, if you're not doing those exercises in between your visits, you're defeating your purpose. You really, really are. So these were rows. So I would tie this onto a doorknob at home when I was at home, and I would do my rows. This is the motion. Okay. And then we did W's. Okay. These are W's, which again are external rotations. 3 sets of 10 of these, because we're trying to get this out. All right. We did these. All right. And there were some other exercises that we started doing as well. Again, trying to get and extend my range of motion. And then they would manipulate my shoulder. That was the most uncomfortable part, when they would be bending it and bending it. Now, here's a little tip for you. I took some pain meds. I took some Oxycodone before I went to therapy the first time I went. And then after that, I would just take ibuprofen. I took 800 milligrams, and this was over-the-counter ibuprofen, not the kind that you are prescribed. You can go to the drugstore and get, I think, 200 milligrams. I took 4 of those an hour before I had physical therapy, because I did not want to be hurting. Remember, low pain tolerance, okay? So that helped me out a lot, because again, I love what he said, and I had 3 therapists. They took turns working with me, and that's how they did. But he said, we're not trying to hurt. We just want it to be stretched to where you feel it, okay? And that's how it was. So it really wasn't so much painful as it was tight, like a tight rubber band. So that's what happened in therapy. Now, today, or this week, in fact, today was this Thursday was my last day of therapy. So I had therapy for 13 weeks, okay? 13 weeks, which kind of was in my mind, because I wanted to make sure that I could at least walk out of there with doing some things, and then having an arsenal of what I could do on my own. So the first part of that therapy was trying to get range of motion back. But the last part of that therapy had to do with strengthening, because this bicep muscle had to be strengthened, as well as these muscles back here that support our shoulders. They had to be strengthened. So some of the strengthening exercises was ball up the wall. This was very hard to do. So I was rolling a ball up the wall and rolling it back down. Now, mind you, 3 sets of 10. Coming down was the hardest part, because I didn't have strength. So that was a strengthening exercise. And then they started me on weights, free weights. Now this is a 1 pound, or this is a 3 pounder. They started me on a 1 pounder, and then they took me up to 4 pounds. So at home I have 5 pounds, and so I was using 5 pounds. Not in the beginning, 1 pound, 3 pounds, and then home 5 pounds, okay? So working on the biceps, so doing bicep curls. Squeezing to squeeze this bicep for strengthening, okay? So that was another exercise for strengthening. So what I was told by the therapist, even way back, was that the easiest part would be the getting your range of motion back, but the hardest part would be getting your strength back in those muscles. So, you know, that's where I am right now. And even though I was released today, he said that I'm still weak. He said, you know, you still are weak. You're very weak still in your muscles, but you're going to have to work. So even though I didn't graduate, I passed to the next grade, but I've got to go to summer school. That's how I see it. So I was able to go back into the gym 3 weeks ago, which is perfect because a lot of the exercises and equipment that I had in physical therapy, I've got in the gym. So I'm in the gym using the machines, a lot of the machines, like the pulleys machine where I can pull down, because it's getting this arm all the way up, which I still can't do because it's strength. So the pulley machines, they've got seated row machines, and I'm going to do a video. In fact, I've already did a video on exercise equipment at the gym. Hey y'all, don't judge. I'm gonna put it out. It was done several years ago. I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So, you know, it doesn't look that good and doesn't look that great. However, just what old people used to say, just chew the meat and spit out the bones, because you will be able to see the exercise equipment as well as how it's used. So I'll put those videos out in a couple of weeks. So that's where I am now. So I'm on my own. I've got to make sure that I'm still doing my summer school. I've still got to work out in the gym. I still have to work on strengthening these muscles. Okay, so another tip, or here's a tip. So remember, first tip is icing. Be sure you ice. Number 2, stay on top of your meds. 3, do what the doctor tells you to do. And 4, make sure that you can sleep as comfortably as you can. So here's just a bonus tip. Clothing. I knew that I was not going to be able to pull things over top of my head, right? So I went online. My mom and I, not my mom, my aunt and I, you know, because she had to do the same thing, at least was looking at having to possibly have the same type of surgery. So we just started doing some investigating, and we went online and we went to Amazon and we saw these shirts, and these are post-surgery shirts, and as you can see, they unsnap. So these were perfect. So I bought quite a few. I bought 2 of these, and some friends bought, if I can get this snap back on, okay. And then a couple of my sisters, my spiritual sisters, bought 2 more shirts. So I had 4 of these shirts, and these shirts were perfect to wear to my follow-ups because I didn't have to pull a shirt from over my head. All I had to do was unsnap it, and they could check and see what they needed to do, because I had steri strips on the incisions, and then after a while I went back and they took the steri strips off. And then I wore them when I went to PT as well. I bought extra large because they're very, very comfortable. And I also bought some other shirts that were extra, extra large, because just laying around in the house for 4 weeks, all I had was big shirts on. I had pants that you can step into, elastic waistband, because I went shopping before my surgery. I had to have everything already laid out, all my clothes laid out, my med schedule already, you know, written out and on a little dry erase board for the young lady that came to take care of me. I had 2. Oh, such a blessing to have those 2 young ladies. One came during the day, and then one spent the night. She left her home and spent the night with me in my home. So I thank God for them. Oh, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. So I did all that before I went. That's another bonus. Line up everything that you need to, your meals, what you're gonna have, who's gonna be with you. All that needs to be figured out, because you want your recovery, your rehab, to be as easy as possible so that you can restore properly, because it's repair. I had repair, recovery, rehab, 13 weeks, and then now I'm on the road to restoration. So I still have a ways to go. You know, they said that this kind of surgery, you know, my doctor told me think 5 months in my head, but in actuality, when I got into therapy, they said 6 months to a year before you will be 100%. Okay, so it's a slow process. It's a marathon. It's not a race. And you can get very, very impatient because sometimes you have good days and bad days. Oh my goodness, weather. You know, old people used to say, like if it was getting ready to rain, they would say, I can tell if it's going to rain. Man, when it was raining, and we've had a lot of rain, if it was raining with the barometric pressure going on with all of that, my shoulder would be so stiff. So I had good days and I had bad days. I had days when I was more stiff and going into therapy especially than other days. So it's a lot of changes. But anyway, I'm just grateful to God. And I wanted to share with you all my journey. And if there's any of you out here that are looking at this video right now, that are going to be looking at this video, if you are having issues with your shoulder or possibly need to have a rotator cuff surgery done, it's okay. Don't be fearful. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay if you make sure that you ice, that you stay on top of your meds, that you follow the doctor's orders, and that you find a comfortable way to rest and sleep, all of that. And it will help you in that process. And then when you go to physical therapy, make sure, and I can't stress that enough, make sure that you do those exercises at home. Do your homework, okay? Do your homework, and that'll help you. And then the big bonus of all, just be patient. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a while. Remember, one thing that's good for me is that I already been down this road, so I know what to expect. And I know all surgeries are not created equal, but at least I know what to look forward to with this right shoulder. Again, unless God heals it, you know, He's a healer. All things are possible with Him. It's possible. So I hope this helps you, and that goes for any type of surgery that you might be contemplating and looking and need to do. This body, it needs to be taken care of. It's just like a car. One of my vehicles is almost 20 years old. She still looks good on the outside, but it's a lot of maintenance that I've had to do within the last couple of months. It's the same things with these temples. The older we get, the more candles we put on the birthday cake. You all have heard me say that. The more you have to do to maintain these bodies. But they are the temple of the Holy Spirit. This is God's dwelling place. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're eating healthy, that we're exercising, that we're doing all of the things that we need to do to keep this body healthy. Because that's going to help you if you have to have surgery. Presenting a healthy body for surgery is a plus, and it also aids in your recovery. So I hope you got a lot out of this. Go back and listen to it again if you need to. And again, like I said, no more physical therapy, but I got a lot of work to do. I've got to go to summer school. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, a victorious life is yours.